You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Parker Ainsworth, Locked On Coogs here, looking at some new reports coming out of Tennessee by Ross Dellinger. Yes, that Ross Dellinger, the buddy that tells us all things happening in the business side of modern college athletics. And according to Dellinger, in Tennessee, the Tennessee State Senate is passing a bill or working to pass a bill that paves the way for state schools and their collectives to break House settlement rules. Before the House settlement is even officially in place and officially over with, the state of Tennessee is looking to break it. And it would prevent the NCAA enforcement entity from penalizing those schools. What you're seeing here is Tennessee is already preemptively trying to say, hey, we see your House settlement, we see your salary cap, we see all these different things that you're trying to do to limit what we can do in terms of building our roster and building our program. And in terms of building all of our programs, frankly, Tennessee has a football program that had Peyton Manning come through it. So I guess there's a little bit of history there. There's other guys too. I should give them credit. But truthfully, they're trying to build up their department as a whole, right? And so they're saying we're not going to abide by this. The state of Tennessee will not. By any public school in the state of Tennessee will not. And in doing that, right, they're sticking a gigantic middle finger up at the entire NCAA and the enforcement entity that hasn't even really started yet. It was supposed to start with a compensation cap, penalties for rule breakers. It was going to try and clean up the pay-for-play NIL model where guys were getting NIL deals and not having to do anything to fulfill them. They're just getting cash for being on the roster and things like that. This was looking to clean up those kinds of things and make those more uniform. And Tennessee says, no, we're not going to do that. They're passing bills right now to not have to do that. You're already seeing P4 or Power 4 conference officials drafting up legislation within themselves, first of its kind of documents that prevent universities from using state laws to duck new rules in college football. What that means is what they're going to do in power conferences is to preemptively keep these Tennessee kinds of things from happening. So to preemptively strike, you're following along here, to preemptively strike that what's happening in Tennessee, Power 4 conferences are already drafting documents that are going to require schools to waive right to those kinds of things and waive the right to pursue legal challenges against the new entity, College Sports Commission, right? They're going to forcibly make public schools. They can't force the private schools, right? But schools within the Tennessee laws about public schools, not private schools. I'm getting too far down the line here. They're looking to force schools within Power 4 conferences to abide by whatever the NCAA says, or potentially have to withdraw from the Power 4 conference itself, right? It would bind the schools together to one another, aim to create some sort of stability and equality. It would also take this out of the state's hands. Tennessee could not have different rules theoretically than the state of Texas or Florida or Montana or whatever, right? And the goal there would be to kind of have some unity and uniformity amongst the Power 4. At least you'd hope that would trickle into Group of 5, FCS, and so on. However, what that also means is that if you try to buck that trend and use state legislation to get around or work around or beat the NCAA's commission, what they're going to do is they're going to kick you out. They're saying you're out of the Power 4. We will not play you further. So now you can't just be independent and play us on the side. They're not going to play, right? And ultimately would hit you in your pocketbook because you're suddenly losing playing those big dollar opponents and big dollar games on top of all the TV revenue you get from being in that Power 4 conference in the first place. And I'm here to tell you, I think that feels like a really big domino. I don't know that it's the domino that people think it is. This feels like a lot of back and forth. People say, look, the Power 4 conferences are already trying to fix it, trying to get out of it. And what I see this as becoming is the Power Four conferences not trying to get out of keeping people from breaking NCAA rules. It's the Power Four conferences trying to make their own rules, right? This is the Power Four trying to get away from the NCAA and state legislation and create an entity in and amongst itself, right? You abide by our rules or you're out. We won't play you. What does that do to Notre Dame? What does it do to like rivalries like Houston and Rice? What does it do to schools now within this? And to say more than that, what's to say that they can only do this with NCAA rules and not just make up their own in the first place? You're with us or you're out. You're with us or you're out, and you've got to play a game every 5 days. You're with us or you're out, and you got to play 15 games a year. You're with us or you're out, and you got to, I don't know, eat salami on Tuesdays. Whatever the case may be, they can theoretically, if they can pass this kind of law and have schools duck state legislation, which admittedly is just in turn state legislation trying to duck NCAA rules. If they can force the Power Four schools, though, to abide by one set of rules being the NCAA and not the other being the state senate, then what's to say they can't make Power Four set of rules that make you abide by, gasp, Power Four sets of rules, right? We've been down a slippery slope for a long time, and I am very pro paying the players. The pendulum was too far the other direction for a long time. College sports blew up into a billions and billions of dollar industry while kids basically legally got sweatsuits and state school paid for. And that's not to say that that's not worth anything. That's not to say there weren't under the table deals being made by all these institutions all the time. Sure, right? However, coaches, administrators, shoe deals, people made a lot of money on those games, right? And so the pendulum has swung back. And now we're looking at this turning into something completely different, right? The pendulum back and forth is going back and forth like crazy. And now you're about to get a Power Four that's removed itself from state legislation, could potentially remove itself from the NCAA entirely, because like, okay, screw you. We don't want to follow those rules either. NCAA says we have to cap this at 20. Power Four says 25. Eat me. Why not? Why couldn't they just do that if they can do this? And I still have to say, and the reason it's a second segment thing, not a first segment thing, is that's admittedly extrapolating a lot on the point. The point here, Dellinger says, the state of Tennessee is already passing laws to duck the House settlement. The Power Four is already crafting codes of conduct that would make them not do that. Boom. That's what's currently being done. Anything else would be going forward with it. But if anything in the last 6 years of college sports has taught us, it's that you kind of have to look that far forward, because that far comes at you faster than you think sometimes. And so anyway, keep an eye on that as things come up, as things happen. Also, keep an eye on blue uniforms and baseball and some insight about how they got to wear those the other day and what they may look like going forward. But first,